I want to welcome our next speakers, being Sara di Angelo and Francesco Cortonesi, and their translator, Valentina, for the Q&A session. So Sara is an activist and the head of the Rete dei Cani Association, which in its 2 parks and sanctuaries houses over 500 animals saved by the meat industry. She's part of the Porci Comodi project and referent of the Rete dei Santuari network, the network that coordinates some of the most important anti-species sanctuaries in Italy. Francesco has been an anti-speciesist activist for the Rete dei Santuari and for Cyto, a project that deals with animals kept in zoos. He has edited numerous reports on the imprisonment of human and non-human animals. Francesco teaches literature and creative writing at schools and in prisons. Sara and Francesco will now present Rete dei Santuari, the experience of Italian sanctuaries who have created a collaboration and resistance project to save animals and solve the difficulties that all sanctuaries inevitably encounter. Welcome, Francesco and Sara.
Hi everyone, I am Sara and I will be talking to you today with Francesco and Valentina. We are here to present La Rete dei Santuari di Animali Liberi, in English the Free Animal Sanctuaries Network in Italy. The network coordinates and regulates some of the most representative sanctuaries in Italy. Together today we will see what are the objectives and the logic of this project that is in continuous growth and evolution. La Rete dei Santuari was born in 2012 from the willpower and need of some of the more senior sanctuaries. By senior, I mean oldest and historical, to create a way of discussing common practices and difficulties, organizational aspects, health and safety regulations, and so on. Having a network structure meant that information would be accessible to everyone, and even smaller sanctuaries would be able to reach results that would have been impossible on their own. The ultimate goal was then to request and obtain a legal recognition, and this is what we are pushing for more than anything. This last point stems from the need to overcome a problem and a fundamental contradiction that we have found not only in Italy, but the rest of the world where sanctuaries are present. In other words, the contradiction is that what we call a sanctuary does not exist as such in legal terms, but is considered in all aspects the same as a breeding farm. This clearly causes a lot of issues and is not acceptable. Let's see why. Being considered a farm is no longer sustainable for 3 essential reasons. Number 1, bureaucratic and managerial reasons. Being considered as a breeding farms creates enormous bureaucratic difficulties, both for sanctuary managers and activists. These may be forced to carry out procedures like drug management, for example, that are not aimed to help the animal, but public health. The same management, practical and bureaucratic difficulties are experienced by public vets, ASL, that is Italy's local health authority offices, who should conduct procedures that are often inapplicable on animals that live free in sanctuaries, and therefore often find themselves forced to derogate from rules and regulations, wasting time unnecessarily because certain checks only matter when animal they are checking is to become food, which in our case will never happen. Number 2, political and strategic reason. In other words, we are not breeders, but their exact opposite. We do not buy or sell animals. We do not breed them. We do not use them in any way. We don't earn any income from them. On the contrary, we spend it to look after them. We do not want to be considered as breeding farms, and instead, we would like to see farms cease to exist. Number 3, practical reason. Until all guests of the sanctuaries have left the National Farm Animal Register and database, they will never be truly free, but still considered walking meat, meat to be sold by the kilo. And in presence of diseases, pandemics, or culling plants, they will always risk being crushed by the gears of capitalism and production logic much more easily than if they were no longer considered as income, but as companions. And now let's talk about the legal recognition. After a lot of pressure, requests, and protests, in 2012, the network of sanctuaries participated in a working conference with the Ministry of Health in order to obtain the legal recognition of sanctuaries as different entities to farms. Principles, proposals, opportunities, and criticalities were discussed. Our demand was and is to ensure that our guests are no longer considered as walking meat, but as unique individuals and refugees. Since then, a long journey has started that leads us today to opportunities in the pipeline, both at regional level through state-regional agreements and at the central level, with the intention of registering sanctuaries as shelters for pets on the same level as kennels. When our guests will be considered pets on the same level as cats and dogs, it will be an extraordinary achievement and will be a forerunner also at community level. Now, let's see who we are and a little bit about us. There are currently 13 sanctuaries that are members of the network, essentially located in 3 Italian regions: Lombardy, Piedmont, and Tuscany, so in the north and in the center of Italy. Other sanctuaries exist outside the network, and the situation is in continuous growth and evolution. The adherent sanctuaries must comply and respect the principles contained in the Index of Values that contains the mission of the network and the characteristics that an anti-speciesist sanctuary should have. The sanctuaries have self-regulated themselves by drawing up together the Index of Values, which is a sort of code of ethics. And alongside the path towards the recognition of sanctuaries, there is a daily fundamental work of construction, consolidation, and expansion of the network, also achieved through, 1, a continuous mapping of the territory in order to identify every centimeter of territory taken away from exploitation and returned to the animals. Number 2, a coordinated and continuous management of emergencies, both at the local and national level. For example, intervening to interrupt the slaughter of animals, activating appropriate plans for the relocation of animals within a reasonable time, or offering us directly as legal guardians in the case of animals placed under criminal seizure, or as those who control the welfare of animals until new accommodation. Number 3, we also continue to work with institutions at national and local level. Regarding this, we have already obtained a recognition as the only valid and credible alternative for courts, local police forces, institutions, and veterinary services for those situations where, if we weren't present, the animals could be simply put down. We present ourselves not as a single entity, but as a strong and needed network with a widespread presence on the territory. We continue to train and form activists who want to start and open new structures, who already run or work in existing shelters. These are internships organized by our sanctuaries with both practical training on the concrete management of sanctuaries and animals and theory training on animal ethology and bureaucratic procedures for starting up the activity. Today, given the circumstances, which mean both in loco and online. Let's see the actual sanctuaries of the network, how they are. The sanctuary for us is the physical space where our liberated animals live free. It's an upside-down world where animals no longer represent a profit for humans, but instead are a debt. They are no longer obliged to produce anything and are free to manage their own life and time as they wish, with no restrictions and far from the cages of exploitation. They are places of resistance and resilience, both for the animals and us. We also resist, exist, and tell tales of hope, resilience, and freedom. After centuries of animals working for us, here the economy is a paradox, flipped upside down, and it is us that work for them. We try and destroy the belief that they are food or a product for us. Instead, they exist for themselves. Every animal that has been saved is a message of hope and ambassador for its species. They show us how their life should be, but very rarely is. We want to create a different model, a microcosm of anti-speciesist practices. We want to alienate the logic of dominion and prejudice in favor of a horizontal, non-hierarchical model based on mutual respect. This is the political role of our sanctuaries, a true revolutionary spark, if we can call it that. This is why we believe the sanctuaries should be at the center of the animal liberation movement, because change passes through these places and often starts from there. When you visit a sanctuary, you will hear the story of the animal standing in front of you, maybe sniffing your hands. As if by magic, our eyes become their eyes, our skin is theirs, and centuries of exploitation disappear just like that. We desire the same things, to be well, to be happy, and to live free. In a magical moment, we get confused, and suddenly we are the same. These places are where empathy is developed and fueled. And precisely for these reasons, it is important to underline that a network of sanctuaries and the individual sanctuaries belonging to it have a dual reason for existing. The first one is more practical and obvious reason. We are the physical shelter, the IARC, the caring hand that manages both directly and indirectly by mapping the territory and reaching out to smaller realities and sanctuaries that may one day also enter the network. And the second is to communicate both the stories of freedom of the animals and the atrocious living conditions in factories of death and dismantling chains. We want to create debate and break down the wall of silence that makes the exploitation of other animals possible. To communicate that another way and another world are not only possible but necessary. We reach out to the community and invite families and individuals to come and meet us and our guests. Animal welfare for caged animals does not exist and makes nonsense. It is a lie and an oxymoron. I would now like to introduce Francesco and Valentina, if it is working, who will better deal with the communication aspect of the net, highlighting how it is equally, if not more important, because it is obvious that the number of animals that we can save and host is limited, and we will never be able to compete with the number of animals exploited. So it is imperative that in order to save these and the next ones to come, or rather, so that there are no next ones, that we must communicate better and together. Thank you.
Okay. I would like to thank Sara for presenting who we are so perfectly. My name is Francesco, and my role within the Rete dei Santuari is to deal with the media broadcasting of the stories of our guest animals and to promote anti-speciesism in every possible way. In order for our message to come across in the correct way, our colleague Valentina will read my presentation as English is slightly better than mine. Thank you.
Thank you, Francesco. So in Italy, talking about anti-speciesism to the big national media was practically impossible until a few years ago. In fact, it was probably only in 2019 that a major Italian daily newspaper first addressed the idea of anti-speciesism. Before then, this word was practically unknown to most people. I mean, of course, even today, it is certainly not the most used word in Italy, but there is certainly some progress. Building a network of shelters that work together has allowed us to greatly enhance our range of action, also at a media level. Thank you to our rescue stories, we have the opportunity to appear frequently in local newspapers. And moreover, at a national level, we have achieved a greater impact, precisely because the idea that there is a network of shelters present on almost the entire national territory is much more appealing to journalists and famous bloggers. All this helps us to save many more animals than we could as individuals. More and more often, we are contacted, even in apparently very difficult situations, where the number of animals to be saved is very high. Once this was much more difficult, and shelters were only contacted when it came to saving a single animal, much more rarely when it came to trying to save herds or flocks, because people considered the task basically impossible. Of course, as Sara has well explained, the sanctuaries are limited, and inevitably, when we have to save so many animals, the difficulties are enormous. But already the possibility to intervene allows us to stop the culls. Once we've gained time, it is clear that the chances of saving their lives increases enormously. Our media work, therefore, also consists in showing people that it is possible, if we are united and in a greater number, to intervene in what seems unresolvable. I would now like to explain to you what the main content of our media channel is. A sanctuary network is able to produce a lot of content. This is because obviously each refuge has at least one person who is dedicated to creating content that tells the life of the sanctuary, a media manager within the sanctuary, let's say. These people have the possibility every day to choose between videos, photos, and stories to be spread through numerous channels, including, of course, social media. As you can easily imagine, what on paper seems very immediate sometimes turns out to be quite a complex work. This is because inevitably we have to maintain constant contact between the sanctuaries in order to post their updates and news. You can imagine that our WhatsApp is on fire quite a lot. Of course, all this is also an advantage. In fact, this allows us to keep up to date with what is happening in all the sanctuaries on the net, despite the geographical distance that separates us. Our union over the last 3 years has been considerably strengthened, and the entry of new sanctuaries has brought new ideas and inevitably new content to spread. As I am sure you all know, communication has many difficulties. Sometimes we find ourselves forced to measure ourselves with a way of doing things that we don't share. Within the animal liberation movement, for example. On social networks, people become, in fact, sometimes fierce, ruthless, rude, generally much more than what they would be in real life. What we would call trolls. So one of the tasks we have set ourselves is to send a message in the opposite direction. For this reason, we decided that our posts should be positive, proactive, except on very rare occasions. We have understood in these years that the fight for animal liberation must also pass through our attitude, and we should try to not be aggressive, but rather show all the beauty and wonders of the animal world. The Sanctuary Network currently has a Facebook page that we update every day and a website that serves as a point of reference for all those people who don't use social media. We're also working on opening an Instagram page very soon. Even if there are many media channels, with these alone, we've managed to reach thousands of people. This has allowed us to have numerous reports of animals in distress all over the country, and we've been able to plan aid interventions. All this would not be possible without a network, because the single sanctuary alone can hardly have the strength to act in such a large territory, as well as the capacity to receive these animals. And exactly for this reason, we've also created a network within the network, so that the smaller sanctuaries can be in contact with us, and they are also able to receive maybe just one of the larger group of animals that we can save. So it's a constant being in contact with each other to see who's got space, who can help us. This is also very effective from a media point of view, because it clearly allows us to show people that an organized system does exist. That people who want to help animals are ready to collaborate, and that the divisions that often affect the animal rights world can sometimes be put aside. This gives people a lot of hope and even more confidence to intervene when they come across some animals in distress. There is another important point that we would like to deal with now, and that is the relationship with the institutions, which is hugely important. These consider and give credit to a structured organization much more than they would do with a single shelter. And as a network, we're now lucky enough to be increasingly recognized by the municipalities and regions which make up Italy. Italy is divided into regions and municipalities. And they ask us sometimes when they seize entire farms or have groups of mistreated animals, we're the first point of contact for them. The relationship with the institutions is very important, because obviously most animals can only be saved by creating bridges with those that from a legal point of view are able to decide their fate. The fact that we have a high level of credibility is fundamental, and this is also thanks to our work with the media. We're very committed to studying the appropriate language, to demonstrate our competence, and above all, being informed also from a legal point of view. So of course, we also have a legal aid as well, and somebody that helps us from that aspect. We believe that all sanctuaries are called to make a small effort in this sense. We'd like to finish by briefly summarizing what message we would like to send to those who are listening to us. First of all, creating a network of sanctuaries is really, really important. We've seen that it is the best way to act and achieve results. We must succeed in getting the message across that the sanctuaries must work closely together. We're really happy to have been able to create this project in Italy, and we hope that it will be useful to other people as well who are listening. We must also work hard to adjust the communication we send out. Very often, unfortunately, activists are misunderstood and associated with people who just create trouble and problems. So we need to have credibility to save animals, because as we mentioned earlier, it is the institutions that unfortunately decide their fate. So our face, we must have a very important face in front of these institutions. The network has allowed us to improve a lot in this respect and be more easily considered when we intervene. Finally, I would like to reiterate that the fact that we are constantly confronted with each other has allowed us to avoid mistakes and to be very effective on several occasions. I believe that the network of sanctuaries is an excellent example of how union makes strength, and that is why we are truly honored to have been invited here in front of this lovely audience to give our testimony. So thank you very much.
Thank you all. Oh, I wish I could have the video that you were playing in the background, because I could watch these I could watch that all day. It's so beautiful. So there's quite some questions that have dropped in. So I'm just going to read them out one by one. So first one is, have you encountered any challenges with pseudo sanctuaries in Italy? So non-sanctuaries such as zoos calling themselves sanctuaries. And if so, how was your network addressed these challenges?
Quindi chiede se avete mai riscontrato un problema di pseudo santuari, cioè zoo o comunque magari fattorie didattiche che si sono chiamate santuari in quel senso, e se sì, come siete intervenuti in questo caso?
Vado io, Francesco?
Sì, vai te, anche perché mi è sparito il video,
Ok.
ora sto cercando di
Allora, io lo faccio in italiano, sì. All'interno della rete sicuramente è difficile, perché prima di aderire, di entrare ufficialmente come membro della Rete dei Santuari, c'è un iter per cui il santuario che vuole entrare deve firmare una carta di valori e viene monitorato. Quindi diciamo che all'interno è molto difficile. E sicuramente non tanto zoo che si travestono, però bisogna fare attenzione perché è un momento in cui molte strutture stanno nascendo, bisogna controllare che tutte abbiano delle buone intenzioni, perché in effetti si può nascondere anche chi invece vuole fare qualcosa di truffaldino con gli animali.
So basically, definitely within the network, we would say no, because before joining, there's quite a long, that you have to kind of register and you have to meet certain criteria to be able to be within the network. So, and they're always monitored continuously. So absolutely within the network, we know there are no pseudo sanctuaries, etc. Outside, we've never really had any problems. There are a lot of realities that are growing now, maybe very small realities. So unless they contact us, we have no way really of checking, but it is important to maybe make sure that their ethic is in line with our values. But unfortunately, we don't have any control legally over all these new realities that are developing at the moment. So, but we've never had any problems, no.
Good to hear. All right, next one is a short one. How do you finance the sanctuary?
La raccolta fondi è fondamentale perché sono animali che per tutto il resto del mondo li trovi a pezzi nel supermercato e quindi è fondamentale lavorare sulla raccolta fondi. Ci sono eventi, progetti, adozione a distanza, crowdfunding e più o meno festival, eccetera.
Very good question and very important. I mean, we sustain ourselves. Fundraising is our main income. Crowdfunding and fundraising is, we have adoptions from a distance, we have events, so we organize all sorts of events, from picnics in the summer, dinners in the winter. We organize a very big vegan festival in Milan every year, who has around 7,000 to 8,000 people come in 2 days. We have projects, so we have to continuously work on coming up with new ideas in order to raise money. So it's sometimes not easy, and this year COVID obviously didn't help because we had a lot of projects and a lot of events planned, but you know, we're trying. So and when there's other festivals as well, we always go with our stand and sell our t-shirts and gadgets and all sorts of things. We never stop.
That's great. Yeah, so the next one is, how do animals of different species interact in the same space?
Come interagiscono animali di specie diversa all'interno del santuario?
È molto interessante perché si apre un mondo meraviglioso, si creano relazioni, a volte anche proprio tra soggetti di specie diverse che decidono di andare a vivere con, per esempio, la pecora non con le altre pecore ma con il maiale, quindi possiamo proprio scoprire ogni giorno un mondo fitto di relazioni il più possibile serene, ovviamente, perché anche all'interno di un santuario ci possono essere delle antipatie e ovviamente chi gestisce deve controllare che tutto fili liscio, insomma, che non ci siano dei momenti difficili. Però ecco, magari la storia più carina, abbiamo una pecora disabile che è Miriam, che non sta con le altre pecore ma sta attaccata a un maialino a pancia tazza che proprio la difende dal resto del gregge.
It's pretty magical, really, because within the sanctuaries, you can just, animals know how to communicate much better than us. I mean, they will communicate within species, and sometimes where there are herds of the same species that will stay together, naturally, without any aid from us, some animals will just decide that they like each other, and just even from different species. So we have a very, I would say the most important couple within the sanctuary is a sheep called Miriam, and she arrived, she was very scared, and she still doesn't really like human contact, and she decided she would be with a Vietnamese pig that we have, and he defends her from the rest of the animals, and they always walk along together. You'll always see them together. So really, speciesism is something that humans have created, because for for other species, this doesn't exist. So, and we do have animals that fight sometimes, but like anything, but as long as we check them, we're with them every day, so we make sure that it doesn't get too aggressive, but it does happen, and it happens a lot. So it's beautiful. It really is.